Welcome to the Ottawa Business Journal's live broadcast of Bringing Ottawa's Downtown Back to Life. I'm Michael Curran from the Ottawa Business Journal. Thank you for joining us in such great numbers today. We have had lots of interest in today's show. We're broadcasting live on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Many of the city's business leaders are joining us today, and we appreciate their time. Before we get into today's important topic, a bit of background. This live broadcast is part of a larger project called Best Offices Ottawa. The project was started back in 2015, way before the pre-pandemic disrupted office use. And the project has one simple goal when it was founded. It is to recognize aesthetically beautiful, functional, and healthy offices. These days, Best Offices includes a glossy magazine that's due out this fall, so keep your eyes open, and this podcast series. And over the past couple of years, we've done several podcasts with today's presenting sponsor, Burovision. In fact, let's take a look and remind you of some of what we've talked about. First off, we've had design trends for today's workplace. That was done a few months back. Also, tips to transform today's post-pandemic office, and also how to optimize your return to office. A reminder that all of those videos can be viewed on OBJ's YouTube channel. Just look for the Best Offices Ottawa playlist. So what does Best Ottawa Offices have in common with the future of downtown? I would argue a lot. In fact, maybe we could agree that aesthetically beautiful, functional, and healthy offices are more important than ever. When we were planning this episode, our guest from Burovision came up with this inspired idea to broaden our focus and focus on bringing Ottawa's downtown back to life. Let's meet her now, our first guest and our sponsor. Here is the president of Burovision Ottawa, Gillian Oxley-Harper. Hello, Gillian.
Hey, Michael, how are you? So nice to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be with you today. And what a wonderful evolution, Gillian, in what we've been doing over all of these episodes. You know, if I think about it, we've been very focused on the inside of what happens to the offices. Today, we're quite literally broadening our focus to include all of downtown Ottawa. And maybe I'll start there, Gillian. Why did you think this is an important topic? Typically, again, we've been talking about like interior design and aesthetics, but you wanted to do something with a much bigger scope. Why is that, Gillian?
We wanted to do something we felt we needed to do. You know, the past webinars have illustrated our belief, as you said so well, creating workspaces where people want to be, where it encourages collaboration and strategy and creativity. But we also have recognized, I think, in every webinar that we've done, that hybrid has a place and that hybrid is here to stay.
Yeah.
But if you have hybrid, you need an alternate home. And that home is your office, and ideally it's downtown. People need to be with people. They need to be around other people. It's not just part of your work experience. It's part of, I think, your health experience. And, you know, the great part of having a downtown location is that it really does pull together all the pieces or the fabrics of the different fabrics of our lives. And, you know, that can be our work life. That can be our social life. When you look at the wonderful restaurants and pubs and just dining experiences downtown, can be our cultural life when you look at the arts and you look at theater and you look at the different events that are brought in to the hub of our city. And it also touches upon the retail experiences, all the beautiful shops, all the beautiful things we can do downtown. And it really, when we're downtown, it aligns us and it allows us to support all the entrepreneurs who have invested in their businesses to support us and to create that wonderful experience. At Burovision, we strongly believe in a downtown core. In fact, when my partners started Burovision Ottawa in 2015, there was no question. We're located downtown in Montreal, and we located in downtown in Ottawa. So it's
right off of Spark Street, yeah.
To be here, exactly. Yeah. And I'll speak a little bit more about that space on Spark Street at the end. I think really our goal with this session today was to let people hear about downtown, how it can be rebuilt, why it needs to be rebuilt. And the three panels the members that agreed to join us, I think, will speak very eloquently and passionately about that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for teeing up the beginning of today's show. We're going to see you in about 15 minutes, Gillian. So I'll bid you adieu at this time.
Okay.
And for our viewers, I'm going to give you a preview of what's going to happen today. We're taking today's show in kind of two parts. The first part will be advocating for a new vision for downtown Ottawa. We'll launch into that in about 30 seconds or so. And in part two, we'll be talking about and examining some of the real estate and related issues. At the end of both of those parts, we'll be looking for your input. So if you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, there is an ability to comment on the live stream, and we'll be looking for your questions. And we hope to make today a real interactive session. We've got some great panelists, so please chime in, share your opinion, share your questions. All right, we're going to launch right into part one now, which again is advocating for a new vision for downtown Ottawa. And we know this has been a topic that's been talked about and will likely be talked about for many months and years to come. We've assembled two of the city's biggest advocates for downtown Ottawa. I'm going to introduce them now. First up, we have Sueling Ching, the president and CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade and a task force member. Hello, Sueling. Great to see you.
Hi, Michael.
And we also have Neil Mahotra, who is the vice president of Claridge Homes, celebrating a LinkedIn anniversary, I'm told. But you're also, Neil, pertinent to this discussion, the co-chair of the Downtown Ottawa Revitalization Task Force. Thank you both for joining us here today. Sueling, I'm going to start with you. Again, we've had some discussions about this, Sueling. In fact, we had a whole summit a few weeks ago devoted to this. But maybe you can reiterate once again why you feel, and you're so eloquent when you speak to this, why you feel the downtown is something that demands our attention right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to speak about this. We've been talking a lot about it since the pandemic, about the downtown, and we know that our downtown and downtowns in large cities all across Canada were disproportionately impacted by the countermeasures of the pandemic. And the downtown in all of our cities is the heart and soul of our cities. It's the center of our economy, of our culture, of our community. And particularly with Ottawa, we have such a 1/4 of our office workers were in the core pre-pandemic, and over half of that was public sector. So we have such a large footprint of the public sector here that it's made it more difficult for us in Ottawa to look at the return to office and how that can impact our economy. So, and why that's important is because we have so many businesses that have been built up all through the years around that district. But also in Ottawa, it's a big part of the assets that we have for the visitor economy, which not only is a huge economic driver for us, and also is the front door to every other form of economic development, because people may come here to visit for a conference or to see the Parliament buildings or to visit one of our museums. And then they may think of Ottawa to return to visit or to move here, be an entrepreneur here, go to school here, or invest here. So really, the economy is really centered in our downtown, and it affects every area of our city, but also our entire region.
I think that's well said. It's not just another area of the city, another neighborhood. Mm-hmm. It really is kind of that foundational item. Neil, I want to bring you into the discussion. You've been working as co-chair, along with Yasser Naqvi, by the way, on something called the Downtown Ottawa Revitalization Task Force. Can you give us a little bit of background about why that was created, but equally important, kind of give us an update on what you've been working on in the past several months?
Sure. Yeah. The task force was created. I mean, these problems became very evident, obviously, in as we were coming out of post-pandemic times, and the reality of hybrid work and work to home was going to be a challenge. So Yasser showed a great deal of leadership in trying to bring a diverse group of people together to deal with the topics. I think initially the focus would be about, what are we going to do with these office buildings if they all stay empty? But there's a great set of issues. I think, they're prevalent. You go to the eyeball test. The social issues downtown have existed a little bit prior to the pandemic and have been magnified a little bit. And whether you look at it as homelessness or mental health issues or drug addiction, there's some significant issues that are hampering our downtown moving forward, and trying to bring some people together and discuss those issues and solutions was a great idea at the time. The task force has been consulting with the public over the past year, along with several subject matter experts on these topics. And I think our goal right now, multi-phased public consultation has just wrapped up. And I think we'll see some recommendations starting to come from the task force, hopefully in late June.
And I'm not going to ask you to scoop yourself. I appreciate you're going to wait till the release of the report. But maybe in the next few minutes, Sueling and Neil, we can talk about not some of the problems, but really some of the options. Maybe I can put it that way. And maybe I'll start with you, Neil, then we'll come back to Sueling. So there's been a lot of input that has been received. I know there's been some research done. It is a multifaceted problem. It's complex. But Neil, do you have any sense of where we can go to move ahead?
Well, I think it's important to understand the economic challenge first. With a hybrid schedule, particularly with the public service, it's roughly 40 or 50,000 people a typical day missing from the downtown core on average. It's obviously less so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Fridays. You could definitely notice the difference in traffic. That's a significant economic impact to solve, particularly for small business that whether they rely on specifically the workers or the residents of the neighborhood. It's just a large number of people missing. Our retail is sized to that. Our restaurants are sized to that. So that's the economic hole that needs to be filled. At the end of the day, the only solution is obviously you need other people to replace it. You can put that into basically three categories. We're going to have residents, we're going to have the day population of workers, and we got tourists. And so ultimately, the three levels of government and the community need to figure out how do we replace those people in the community. The obvious answer is, hey, you go change all these office buildings into residential places and have people move into them. But the reality, particularly from where I come from, we only move a couple thousand people a year into downtown Ottawa, historically, pre-pandemic. It's not Toronto where there was 30, 40,000, 50,000 condominium units being put up in the downtown core. The best year in Ottawa, there was maybe 2,000 condos being put up in the last 10 years, and it's been more like 1,000 is really the average. In the residential standpoint, we have seen an increase in kind of purpose-built rental construction, but to be honest, with the current interest rate environment, that's starting to slow down. So it's not going to be just residential development, and it's not going to be just changing office buildings into residential, because that's actually a very complicated, tough process. There are limited buildings that actually physically are even capable of it. Office buildings are just designed very differently than residential buildings. They're typically developed as much bigger buildings, which does not make it very easy to turn into residential buildings, because residential buildings need window exposure and daylight. Not just from a functional standpoint, but actually from a building code standpoint. So there's some significant technical issues. And then, the other part you got to boost is tourism. What can we do to increase tourism in the city to help to fill that? And I think all levels of government are gonna have to put their head to it on what are those things we can put that attract people to come downtown more often, Monday to Friday. What's evident in this city, you just have to look at race weekend this past weekend. It brings people downtown, and that's great for Saturdays and Sundays. But how do we do that Monday to Friday? Because quite frankly, there aren't too many businesses that can survive on 2 out of 7 days of good business, right? Businesses are striving to be 7 days, if possible, busy, but at least 5 is important.
Absolutely. And Sueling, you've spent considerable time on this issue too. You've talked to experts like Mary Rowe. When you think of the coming years, what are some of the options you think we should be delving into a little bit more at this point?
Well, Neil's quite right. We have to look at our downtown as a place that will attract people for all different kinds of reasons. And you know, the pandemic has put us in a position where we were trying to figure out what the long-term impacts will be. And I think we all know, obviously, hybrid and the disposal of the federal assets in the downtown are going to impact us. So we need to have a really clear understanding of what that means, and look at a multifaceted approach, as you have said. So we really believe that there's all levels of government, yes, but that we all have a stewardship role to play in the downtown. You know, our ability to continue to support local, to communicate how important it is, and have people coming to Ottawa. So there's short and long-term strategies, and then there's strategies that are simple, like animation, like the race this last weekend, and how many more of those kinds of things can we put on and support and invest in to bring people to Ottawa so they can see how fabulous it is, but also long-term strategies, including infrastructure. Conversions is one option. Conversions not just to residential, but, you know, are there opportunities to bring other types of businesses into the core? So it has to be sort of a multi-pronged approach where we're looking at how can we invest in employment, in infrastructure, and then have people living, working, and playing downtown as well.
Sueling, I'll stay with you for a second here. One of your favorite phrases that I like is radical collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as you've indicated before, we had that during the pandemic, but we're going to need that again for the downtown, because this, again, just to underline, will be a multifaceted issue that will need the federal government, provincial, NCC, city government, Ottawa tourism, boards of trades, private sector players, festivals, so on and so forth. Are you confident that everyone appreciates what we're facing here from a potential risk point of view?
You know, Michael, you and I started talking about this over 2 years ago when we first brought Mary from the Canadian Urban Institute to Ottawa for an Ottawa Economic Outlook. And, you know, at that point, she was starting to signal we need to be moving, we need to be taking action. And I think now people are starting to see that we have to be assertive, that we have to prioritize progress over perfection, and that it has to be an all hands on deck. So I do see how people are starting to understand why it's important for the whole city and the entire national capital region for us to have a thriving downtown, for sure.
Neil, let's come back to you. I think one of the reasons why you're on the task force is because of this remarkable expertise in residential that you bring to the table along with Claridge. I heard you loud and clear that converting commercial buildings into residential is way more complicated than people think, and in many cases, the buildings simply cannot be converted. I'm wondering, Neil, if we need, if private sector developers such as Claridge and your peers need some level of incentive to be looking at the suitable buildings. Is that something that you would advocate for, Neil?
So I would, at this moment, I actually would personally advocate we probably need incentives for all types of residential downtown. Not just conversion, not just affordable housing. Costs and demands are in a place where it is going to need some help. A year ago, the city was going in the direction, it was actually becoming the most expensive place to develop with the highest burdens to the city. Were coming into the downtown areas, particularly at transit stations. Some of that's been corrected, but there's a need for a lot of things to happen, and it's going to be very careful not to just get caught up in one thing. One of the interesting things in Ottawa is, essentially pre-pandemic, there was actually 4 or 5 building conversions that occurred of office buildings to residential, where market conditions worked, and then that was a factor of essentially there's certain types of buildings that the feds were no longer continuing with, and they had some of the qualities that allowed them to be converted easily. Typically, there were smaller buildings, essentially. So that was kind of happening with the market anyways. And there's at least 4 or 5 examples of where that's occurred in the city in the last 5 years. But we need to get a higher velocity of people living downtown. And we need to, downtown is considered the most expensive place to live in the city. It needs to be a relative option that it's not actually the most expensive place in the city for units to be developed going forward, because the natural draw for people to live downtown was to be living close to work. And if you're going to work at home, it's just as easy to live at your cottage up at the Big Rito. And that's a reality. And the patterns of growth in the communities around Ottawa, like Kempville and Rockland and Carleton Place, have shown people are going further away. And whether it was they wanted more space out of safety during the pandemic or whatever, people started getting away from living in the city and say, hey, I want a quieter lifestyle. And affordability became a big part of that as well. I can have, for the price of living in a 2-bedroom condominium downtown, I can live on 3 acres in Renfrew. And lots more people were starting to make that choice. So there's going to need to be some thinking about how we get more people choosing to live downtown. And part of that's economic, and part of it's some of the other stuff and improving lifestyle downtown, and having more draws that you just want to be around downtown 5 days a week, because it is lively and it's exciting, and it really is a lifestyle decision.
I agree 100%. And I think what people need to be careful about is the tipping point, right? That we don't reach that tipping point where the incentive to live downtown, whether it's quality of life or closeness to, various cultural and other types of activities, doesn't diminish. We're going to start wrapping up. We still have a few minutes here, Sueling and Neil, but maybe I'll come back to you, Sueling, and ask, is there one next step that you think we should take, or one reason to feel optimistic in this? Because often when I'm having this discussion, I'm just seeing barrier.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't limit ourselves to that type of thinking. We can't be in this kind of paralysis by analysis type stage. So what's a next step we should take, Sueling, or what's something that makes you optimistic? And Neil, I'll ask you the same question in a second.
Maybe Neil should answer first.
Uh-oh, we're in trouble.
So I do feel as though it doesn't do us any good to keep focusing on what the barriers are, to look at them as opportunities. And the truth is that we do have an opportunity in Ottawa to transform our downtown in a way that we would never have even contemplated doing pre-pandemic. And we had this sort of what do you call it? Like that one horse pony show or something, where we rely so much on the public sector, and so that also puts us at risk, as it has done now, right? Which we didn't anticipate, and we would never have been forced to revisit. So we have a tremendous amount of strengths in our downtown core. We have so many amenities, being in the nation's capital. I think that I'm optimistic that we are now trying to work together to understand what the future could look like, and how the nation's capital could transform. I think that's exciting. I think if we build on the strengths that we have and then look at new opportunities, collaboration is the key. Having a plan is a key, that everybody can, see the vision and see their part in it, including the community and every level of government. So I do believe we need to create some momentum to keep the positivity going, to build some confidence in the market, so that our businesses, our entrepreneurs, our developers see Ottawa and the future that it has the potential to be.
I think it's a brilliant point, because as we know in business, every challenge is an opportunity. And it's quite funny, as you pointed out, that, for decades we would have said our downtown is so stable because we have all these public sector workers and they really provide an economic foundation. And now that kind of became a little bit of an Achilles heel. But I do think you're right, Sueling. Like it is if we're brave about this, it is an opportunity to forge a new vision and build a better city.
And at our very first task force meeting, Neil was the one that educated me that it wasn't all perfect pre-pandemic either.
100%.
And so we could be looking at a 24/7 vibrancy that maybe we didn't have before.
Absolutely. And Neil, I'll come to you. And by the way, I'll point out we are getting some comments in, and people are making that comment. The downtown had problems before the pandemic, and the sidewalks were rolling up at 5 o'clock. I always think there's a little room to debate that. But Neil, let's come back to you. So what's one next step? I mean, we're going to see the task force issue a little bit of a report, but what's a next step, and what's one reason to be optimistic here, Neil? Please give us a reason.
Well, listen, I think there's some really interesting things bubbling around town. Some of them quite public right now, and some not so public. And there's interest in people making some significant investment in this city. I think we've got to figure out how to get some of those things done. There's no, even on the tourism side, there's no like one magic bullet. Like,
No.
I'll use the example of like, if an event center comes to LeBreton Flats, it's a piece of the puzzle, but there's multiple pieces that need to be done. And so hopefully some of those investments can move forward in a really positive fashion and not get caught up in red tape and whatever else, and those things move forward, and those will be the starts. And more reinvestment at Lansdowne and some of these things that are there, those are some pieces, the opening of the library, confident eventually the LRT is a functional asset for the city and something people have trust in, and all those bits and pieces will start to contribute, and really our easy win, I think, for the city is to get the people from the suburbs to start enjoying the downtown core more and start using it more, right? There's a million people that live on the perimeter of downtown that need to get back in the habit of coming downtown and want to. They're just waiting for those reasons to come back downtown. So I think that's really going to be the short-term win is getting a few things that just bring people from across the city and the region coming downtown on a more regular basis, and not just special events, but just sort of make a habit of doing it again.
Yeah. One quick comment from you, one follow-up for you, Neil, and then we'll wrap up here. And I'm not looking to put you on the spot, but you did mention LeBreton. I was debating in my head whether to bring it. So we're not going to get into who owns the Senators or that type of stuff. But let's just imagine there's an event center on LeBreton. Let's hope. How important on a scale of 1 to 10, for example, Neil, do you think that is in terms of the new vision of downtown? Is that a massively important component that we get that right?
I think, like I said, I think I'd phrase it as, I think we need 2 or 3 things.
Okay.
Like that to start filling in those gaps for people. And those are like the short-term wins, because it sort of come back to like, we're not going to double the residential population of downtown tomorrow. In fact, the history of Centertown, it's only about 10 years ago we got back to the population that existed in the 70s in Centertown. Okay, like it's been declining. That's a factor of aging demographic in that neighborhood. People's kids leave, the families leave, and you've got 1 or 2 people living in places where 4 or 5 live. But we really only got back there about 7-8 years ago. It was actually quite dire for a while. So where we can attract our local residents from around the neighborhood, as well as tourism related things, but we need 2 or 3 things. An event center, will give you 75, 100 nights busy, but there needs to be other things, right? And it can't all just be, national museums that you take your visiting friends to once in a while. We need fun and exciting things, whether it's concert venues, theaters. We need more and more of that stuff downtown, and those actually could be easy wins. So I do think it's important, whatever they are, whether it's an event center or whatever it is. We just need 2-3 things that start bringing people downtown on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Listen, I think we could do this weekly, and I have this discussion, and I think it's a very healthy one to continue momentum and continue a focus on this topic. But unfortunately, we've run out of time for you, Sueling and Neil. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today. I want to wish you continued success in these discussions. It's complex, but I think we've got the right people on the job. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we're going to move on to part two of today's show, and it examines a little bit of the real estate, particularly from a commercial perspective. And once again, we've got two great guests joining us here today, real experts, in fact. Our first guest, I was looking up on LinkedIn just to check a figure. He has almost 30 years experience working in commercial real estate. Let's bring him on screen now. Here is Jeff Brown, the Associate Vice President and Broker at Colliers Ottawa. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, I am excited to get into this with you, and welcome back. We're going to bring Gillian Oxley-Harper, of course, from Burovision back on screen. I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and there's still lots to talk about here, Jeff. I think where I wanted to start off, Jeff, and I don't like, I'm really am cautious about using these negative statistics and not throwing them around too much. But if I understand correctly, a recent update on commercial space in downtown Ottawa indicated that we're almost at 14% vacant office space, and that, as I understand it, Jeff, is an all-time record for the city. So we're gonna get a little bit more optimistic here, but let's just realize, Jeff, like that's a problem, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you look at pre-COVID, we were running at 5% for Class A downtown, around 10%. Things were trending down. Pressure on rental rates was going up, which is not great for tenants, but it does prompt interest in new construction activity. And we actually did see a new building come up in Zibi. So that was all positive. But the challenge was when COVID hit, everything stopped. And again, I'm an office leasing guy, so obviously I'm a little biased that way. But what we saw was a trickle of sublease opportunities start to hit the market as tenants realize they don't need as much space kind of going forward. That translated into increased direct vacancies as these tenants kind of moved away from their office lease, realizing they don't need the space and they're better off saving the money. So it's a very, very challenging time right now. It's a matter where there's so much uncertainty from a tenant's perspective in terms of what this whole hybrid model is going to look like. How much space do I need? Do I need space? What am I going to do? I mean, everything is kind of just slowed right down because of that.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. And again, I'm not going to dwell on the negative here, but I will point out that, based on my understanding of the situation, of course, there are still many businesses offices locating downtown that leases haven't come due since the pandemic. So not only are we at like 14% vacancy, but it's possible this might get worse for months, maybe even like a year or 2 years before we see a stabilization. Is that kind of an accurate statement, Jeff?
I would say that, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, again, just given the uncertainty, I think it's going to be about 3 to 5 years before we have any real clarity in terms of how our downtown is going to end up from a vacancy perspective. I do think, again, we've kind of hit a bit of a double whammy. We've got the kind of indecisiveness by the federal government in terms of the whole back to the office mandate. Tech has been hit really hard by this whole thing where, pre-COVID, we had a really nice kind of tech hub developing in the downtown, kind of led by Shopify and SurveyMonkey. And now, Shopify's put a lot of their space on the market. There's other tech companies kind of doing the same within the downtown. Plus, you get all those, smaller companies, the NGOs and whatnot that, they don't need an office. They're very comfortable and highly productive working from home. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit challenging over the next little while. But again, it creates opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And I think for the proactive landlords and for those tenants that are kind of thinking ahead, there are opportunities out there.
Great segue. And Gillian, we're going to bring you into the conversation here in a minute. But let's talk about those opportunities, Jeff. So it's not all dread. There are investments being made by private sector landlords in some of the top buildings in downtown Ottawa. Maybe you can walk us through a few of those, what you've seen, Jeff.
Yeah, well, I think if you look from a high end, leasing activity has not stopped. There has been a move to quality. And I know sometimes people talk about a flight to quality, but right now, nothing is moving quickly. There's a move to quality. Those tenants that are active in the market, choosing to relocate, are moving to better better office buildings, buildings with amenities, not only amenities within the building, but outside of the building. So a good example is these are pictures of Constitution Square. They've just basically gone through a major multi-million-dollar renovation to their retail concourse, trying to move away from more of the formal institutional lobby to a more of a people place. This is a picture of what the World Exchange Plaza is going through with their complex. Major $30 million renovation to their two-story retail concourse to make it again more of a people place. And I want to read something actually that it was from some it's not propaganda, that's not a nice way to say it, but promotional material from the World Exchange Plaza, which I think you could apply to all of these. So what they're trying to do, they're trying to create a modernized all-day people place, work, meet, dine, gather, connect, and engage in others in an environment that inspires the countless possibilities, opportunities, and unexpected delights of every day. Again, the office is just not about the office anymore. It's what else can you do while you're at the office? It's the building. So ideally, you could go down, maybe you do some shopping, you do a business lunch. It's a lot more than just the office. The office is changing, and Gillian can certainly cover off that. But again, it's what's outside the office. This is a picture of Sun Life Financial Center. They were kind of the first to kick it off. They finished their renovations prior to COVID. And again, making it a people place, making it a place where you can grab a coffee, you have a place to sit, you can chat with colleagues. There's the opportunity for casual collisions with colleagues or from my business, competitors, or with landlords. I mean, that's what we're looking for. That's the beauty of the downtown. Keep in mind that 40% of our competitive office market is located within the downtown. So it's important that we get this maybe outside of the box thinking by these proactive landlords to entice tenants back or to remain in the downtown.
Yeah, and this is kind of what we were talking with Sueling and Neil, that it's important to maintain some sort of momentum, create a sense of momentum. And when I think of Constitution Square, when I think of Sun Life Financial Center, and when I think of the renovations going on at World Exchange Plaza, we're quite literally talking about tens of millions of dollars that are being invested to create. I like thinking of it as people magnets, and I'm going to, on that point, Gillian, come back to you. In a lot of these live broadcasts that we've done, we've talked about the need to create an experience. In those past episodes, Gillian, we talked about experience within an office, but as Jeff has just so aptly showed us here, it's bigger than that, isn't it? It's a building, it's a neighborhood.
Absolutely, and it's fun fact, we actually furnished that lobby at Constitution Square last year, where that wonderfully successful Ottawa is Open for Business event was held. Beautiful space, very welcoming, different areas for people to sit, large open areas, quieter little nook corners where you can go and have a quiet coffee and an impromptu meeting with someone. So we're really seeing that investment. 3 of our largest, most recent projects were actually tenants moving into the World Exchange Plaza. So those tenants that are choosing to invest in creating spaces where people want to be are going to actually encourage people, to Jeff's point, to either stay, to take on a sublet, or to renew their leases. So it's really, it's from the bottom, and I say the bottom meaning the lobby, up on all the floors as well, that we have to have this methodology and this idea to go in and make these spaces, rethink them so that people really want to be there.
Yeah, and it is a little bit, Jeff, I'll come back to you. You must be hearing this from some of the tenants that are looking to lease space downtown. It is about creating this experience, right? Like, let's just dig into that a little bit more. So it's not about mandating people back into the office a certain number of days a week, although that might be a reality for some organizations, both private and public sector, but it's more like creating the incentive. Is that right, Jeff?
Yeah. Not that I'm an expert, but I almost think there's been a bit of a shift in the power dynamic from the employer to the employee. Now, this is not across the board, but I think a lot of employers are very, very sensitive to that, and they don't want to mandate. They want to maybe have the office be a magnet, how to attract the employee back to the office, as opposed to just across the board mandate, which I don't think is going to be successful and will push away some employees. And I think by them doing that, by being flexible. Again, hybrid is a wonderful model. There's no reason in the world someone should sit in their car for 3 hours on a snowy winter day trying to get back downtown when they can be just as productive, working where they are. But I also think, again, from a collaboration perspective, from a human interaction, I think it's good to get outside of the office. I mean, I was a good citizen. I survived for about 6-7 weeks at home when COVID first happened. I had to go into the office. I needed a journey, and then I had 7,000 square feet to myself. So it's nice now that we are seeing some more activity in the downtown. I think the latest stat is Ottawa's still lagging behind all major metropolitan cities, but we're at about 51%, and I would suggest that 51% is Tuesday to Thursday.
Absolutely.
But you know what? I think it's slowly moving forward, and again, I'm very I try to be very optimistic, the glass half full, and I keep kind of, last September I thought we'd see dramatic changes with people coming back to work. That didn't happen. I'm kind of hoping now for this September, but again, I do think it's going to be a longer term program, and I do think, again, it's the status quo. The former status quo is not going to work going forward. Landlords and employers need to rethink their space. Where are they going to be? How can they attract those employees to the office without mandating them?
It's that new vision. It's a vision for the downtown. It's a vision for a building, and it's a vision for an office. Jeff, I'm going to repeat what I said to Sueling and Neil, that I wish we had more time to talk. We're at risk of running a little bit long here. So I want to thank you, Jeff, for bringing, I think it's 28 years of experience, and sharing that with us today. We do really appreciate your participation.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're goodbye. That's again Jeff, a longtime leader in the commercial real estate place. Gillian, we'll start wrapping up here. Before we do, I got a question to ask you. I just want to give a shout out to some of the people that have been participating and some of the comments they've been sharing. Lori Alphonse is reminding us that accessibility is important. Inclusivity is an important driver. I love that point. Here's someone by the name of Basil talking about it's wise to think about renovating buildings to be smarter, healthier, and more sustainable. So thinking about accessibility, thinking about inclusion, thinking about the environmental concerns. And then I thought this was an interesting comment. Thank you, Ziki, for sharing this. That again, he's advocating for more people living downtown. So make sure that we're not simply workers commuting back and forth to the suburbs. So thank you for that. Gillian, we're gonna come back to you here in a minute to talk about a really exciting development with Burovision. Burovision is not simply talking about the downtown core. Burovision is in fact looking to make a significant investment. And I'm looking for our producer here. I see that Gillian might be frozen on screen. So maybe what we'll do while we're waiting for Gillian to come back is we're going to show a little video and some images here on screen about a major announcement from Burovision. Let's look at those visuals. What we're seeing here, by the way, is Spark Street, and this is the Podium Mall, as the Podium building, as it's often talked about. And the exciting news that we're sharing today is that Burovision is tripling the amount of space it has in the Podium building. Burovision did a recent acquisition in the Ottawa market, and that work is under construction right now. You're seeing cell phone video of the construction. Gillian's back with us, by the way. We'll go to you in a second, Gillian. But this is exciting, Gillian, news for you to be sharing. Again, I just want to reiterate that we've been talking a lot about making investments in downtown, and Burovision. Share the news with us here, Gillian.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm not quite sure what happened. I could hear you. I just had this black screen. I was going, okay, come on, you can ad-lib this.
That's okay. You're back now.
We have a fly-through of the Podium, and then the Podium, the current space we're in right now, we are actually tripling it We are tripling our space in downtown Ottawa. We're taking over the entire Spark Street facing floor of the podium building on the second floor. This is a fly-through that was created by one of our very talented design team in Montreal. So this is what we're going to, and you will see in a very few seconds where we're at right now. So
okay. Yeah, we saw some construction images there.
Under construction in Spark Street.
There you go.
Fall
I can almost imagine people swinging hammers here.
No, drilling, swinging hammers. You think I have a little bit of an echo here? This is why I'm not downtown right now. It's been completely gutted. And our goal, we've done these webinars with all of you on creating workspaces, tips for transforming. And we really are applying, what we preach, what we believe into our own space, where we're coming in and there's this beautiful pavilion area where people can meet, have a touchdown meeting, have a coffee, bring in a customer into the space that's delineated with interesting visuals of shelving, of green space, of wood, of natural fibers, a lot of texture, a lot of accessibility to seeing things, beautiful artwork on the walls, color pieces of interest, collaborative areas, privacy pods. You may remember I talked to you about Zoom rooms way back at the beginning. Areas where we can present and spread out and strategize, quieter, more traditional meeting rooms. So really a space that we are investing in to bring not only our team, but our customers and our industry partners to where they can work and thrive, be productive, and where they want to be. So we're going to look forward to welcoming everyone to our new, largely expanded space in late September of this year. So we truly are looking forward to being back downtown.
Absolutely. And just to underline, what we're talking about here, this will really be an inspirational place. So if you're a company or if you're an organization looking to re-engage your employees in terms of space and finding that experience that will draw them back to the office, I can just imagine, Gillian, this is going to be a place of inspiration. And I should point out, this kind of like tie a little ribbon in this, that we're going to be launching the 2023-2024 Best Auto Offices magazine in that space. So if you're interested, please stay tuned.
We're excited because that'll be your first live event of that Best Offices since 2019.
That is exactly it. That is exactly it.
To kick it off, and I know all of us here at Burovision are just tremendously excited, and I think I have to say a little impatient to see it finished and to get back down.
Everyone's always a little impatient with renovations. That's par for the course.
Our customers are going through, so it's okay. We understand.
Par for the course. So, Gillian, I want to thank you again, not only for supporting this podcast over the past couple of years, but also having the inspiration for today's topic, right? Which is really to zoom out and talk about the entire future of downtown.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
All right. So we'll bid Gillian adieu, and we'll get into our final send-off here. I want to thank everyone that participated today, Sueling, Neil, Jeff, and also Gillian. I want to remind everyone that if you're interested in continuing to pursue this issue, there's a great digital destination for this, and you can go to our website at obj.ca. This is a topic at OBJ that we take very seriously. We're putting a lot of resources into reporting on this and other real estate stories, so I recommend that you visit the website obj.ca. We've got a great weekday email newsletter called OBJ Today. Many of the city's top business and political leaders look at that email to scan through it and get the top stories of the day. Of course, you can find us on social media. Our LinkedIn just eclipsed 30,000 followers, by the way. And since a lot of you are here on YouTube, I want to ask you to click the like button, the red subscribe button, and if you click the little bell, you get notified when we're online. So that brings us to the end of today, bringing life back to downtown Ottawa. Hope you've learned a lot. Let's continue this discussion and make sure this issue stays in the forefront for both the political and business leaders. Thank you for tuning in today. On behalf of the bigger crew at OBJ, I'm Michael Curran signing off for today. See you soon. Bye-bye.